The bottom line is that regarding all of one's worries, all of one's sources of tension, one should direct his heart towards heaven. So I think he means both categories of mundane, physical worries and spiritual things. All should be directed towards Hashem. For example, he says, mes lo mes, if, God forbid, a relative dies, yis abel v'yivke v'yitztayer. He should certainly mourn and cry and feel anguish over the loss of this person, this soul, the loss for him, and also loss for the person himself, who's been separated from this world, is now no longer able to do what the person can do while he's here. But there's a limit to mourning as well. It's possible that the person the person died because of transgression. And also it's possible that a person's transgressions can actually be delivered, unfortunately, upon the children. Very, very strong things here. And therefore a person should do tshuva and make all types of protective barriers in case, if God forbid, in some way the mourner is somehow responsible or has some part in this person's passing. And he should cry out to God. And our sages say that a person will not die if there's any person who would hear about it and does not deserve hearing the bad news. God will actually preserve a person's life to prevent somebody who would hear about the death and not deserve hearing that bad news. God would preserve the life of such a person, which means if a person does die, that means that anybody who's going to hear about that is, quote unquote, right, deserving of hearing it, not meritorious enough to be prevented from hearing about it. So that I'm only saying this as a way of maybe explaining in more subtle terms something that the author here, which is addressing, is that if someone passes away, since we're all interrelated to one another in one way or the other, even if it's to the point of not being worthy enough to prevent themselves from hearing the bad news, in some way, in some even small measure, we have some collective responsibility to the person's passing away. If I was righteous enough that I should be deemed meritorious enough not to hear that bad news, then I could have prevented the person's death. And if I'm not meritorious enough to protect me from that, then in a way I've contributed in some small measure to the decision, part of what was made in the decision process of God's causing that person to die. That's pretty intense. Where we're collectively responsible for one another's spiritual elevation and also, unfortunately, other people's demise as well. And that's part of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh L'Zeh. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh L'Zeh. We are all kind of connected one to the other spiritually. So that if you want to make a bracha and I want to make a bracha, you can make your bracha for me and include it so that I can also drink without actually saying anything. Why? Because you and I are like this. We're spiritual brothers. And when your soul makes that bracha, my soul also makes that bracha. We're like tuning forks, right? And I resonate with you. And when that happens on a good scale, it can also happen, unfortunately, negatively as well. If somebody is transgressing somewhere, all our collective Jewish souls, which all resonate with one another on different frequencies and different levels, but each one according to the relationship that we have with the Jewish people, so somewhere that negativity is going to resound and reverberate within us. So that if a person transgresses here, that can have a negative effect on another person elsewhere, even if that person himself is not negative, even that person is not wicked. And I don't remember the actual names of the people involved in this particular story, but there was a story where it's quite frightening actually, but well, the story basically goes that maybe, I don't know, sometime a century or two ago in Europe, a Jew murdered somebody. And it was unthinkable that a Jewish person at that time could murder anybody. It just never happened. And the community asked the rabbi, how is it possible that we got into a state where a Jew actually murdered? He said that if a Jew murdered there, it's because some other Jew elsewhere did something wrong with his hands. And it has a reverberative effect. Now, I don't remember if the story was told to me in a way which implied specifically what might have been done wrong with one's hands that would have caused the spilling of the blood. Perhaps the spilling of the seed is associated here with the result of spilling the blood there. But either as specific as that or even more general, just the point that we're all interconnected. And what we do for good or for bad has an effect on other people. It's a very intense idea. Perhaps that was the suggestion. At least that's the way I understood it at the time. At least by the person who told me the story, is that the spilling of the seed, which represented the spilling of life in the private chamber, resulted in the spilling of the blood, taking one's life in the public sphere. So that we're all interconnected in this way, and it's very important to remember that. Yeah, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, like, you find things that pertain to these little prophecies, all these spiritual messages, even in the Chumash, yeah? The spirituality of Judaism, the way it all works, the way, like, other nations bless themselves in the names of our forefathers, it says there, the way we control the fate of the world through our conduct.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing, right?
Yeah.
You can never understand it fully, it's infinite, the wisdom.
Yeah, it's the interconnectedness.
Yeah, and it's beautiful to learn something new, so from being a Torah, trying to be a Torah scholar, you can learn something new every day because the information and the knowledge and the gems of wisdom is infinite.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
It's about the possibilities.
Yeah, beautiful. And the positive energy that's created from learning in general, and the enthusiasm of learning something new, or learning something that you think you know, but learning it anew and seeing that there's more to it than you thought. All that positive energy that's generated from that learning also has that ripple effect to inspire some Jew somewhere, in some way, to either be interested in Torah or interested in some Torah idea, or maybe even just to give him a certain degree of remorse to refrain from doing something wrong. That it's all out there and it's all interconnected.
The beauty of it to the core, it's like the thing of the rolling mitzvahs. Not only do you make yourself feel good when the honor sham is lifted, through that it has a positive effect on the other Jewish people in the world as well.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. Rabbi Nachman Breslev says in the Kutei Moran, he's penantiv komo ve'eno, that talking about a wicked person, contemplate his place and he's no longer there. The simple meaning seems to be, if you think about a Russia and how he succeeds and so forth and so on, but the Pashat meaning, the simple meaning of the verse seems to be, but that's all fleeting, because if you just think about his place in just a short period of time, he'll be neutralized and no longer there. The Rabbi Nachman explains it differently. He says, if you think about this Russia, about his place, and you think about him positively, you think some good thought about this person, as a result of your good thoughts about this person, he'll no longer be there in that place of wickedness. It's your positive thoughts about him which can actually elevate him from the place so that he's no longer there. As you think about his place, think about a positive think about this person, where he is right now. Because of that thought, he's already going to not be there. Your thought about him, even if he doesn't know about it, is going to affect him in a way that's going to elevate him from being from that lowy spot, one spot up. This is called the Nekudas Tovos in Breslev Hasidus, is thinking good thoughts about people. It actually elevates them, and it's a very important point. Also, kind of a demonstration of these positive, about the way in which thoughts about other people in the world has an effect on the world. And from our point of things, when it's very important. It's very important to be thinking positively about all the Jews wherever they are, and thinking about those who are suffering and in danger. Thinking about them positively, good thoughts and prayers, and that energy should be protective, and it's important to feel that empathy. So therefore, then, I'm just pointing out that you see how subtle this idea about how we actually have some indirect, tacit responsibility for things that happen for other people, whether it's for good or, God forbid, even for bad. And therefore he goes on and says, Imes Adam Kosher, if a a kosher person dies, yeah, meaning an observant, God-fearing person dies, yitztayer v'yivkei alav, he should be very unhappy and cry over him. V'oisan hadmos HaKadosh Baruch Hu sofer osan, those tears, God counts them, v'gonzan, and he treasures them, bebeis ganozov, in his treasury, k'moshe ne'emar, as it says, Sima dim'asi b'na'odecha halo b'sifrasecha. Place, David HaMelech says, my tears in your kind of vessel, and you should count them, right? Count them. Count these tears, he says to God. V'im yesh tzara, and if there's some unfortunate situation, kagon ra'av, like hunger, the dever, or pestilence, or shar puronios, or any other types of catastrophic occurrences, war, v'kiyotze behen, lo'olam gidag shem avonosav gormim ha'inyan, he should think maybe his transgressions are a result of all of this. Maybe his transgressions have something to do with it. Ki ochon ma'al becherem v'noflu kama olafim. Because we see, for example, in the book of Joshua, that Achan, one of the people who was mentioned there, he actually took hold of the booty that the Israelite armies gained from the enemy, despite the fact that they were told by God and warned by the prophet Joshua not to touch the booty. He, nevertheless, hid in secret this booty, and as a result of that, it caused a plague for the entire people. Many people, thousands of men died as a result of that, until they finally found out that Achan had taken this forbidden material, from the war.
What was that?
I'm saying that when the Jewish people, led by Joshua, came into the land of Israel, and they were conquering the land of Israel, they were told by God through Joshua, the prophet, the leader, who was also military leader of the Jewish people, not to take for themselves the loot from the war, but they should burn it and dispose of it and not use it. What's that? No, they shouldn't use it. Just not use it. And Achan took some of this secretly, and he hid it. And as a result, he brought calamity upon the Jewish people. Nobody knew that this forbidden material was being hidden by Achan, and it had a ripple effect, and this plague broke out until finally they found out through lots who it is that actually stole the material.
What was his punishment?
Achan was put to death. And I'm not entirely sure, but I seem to remember seeing a source in which Achan tried to justify his actions by dedicating it to God. V'yoshuv l'Shem Baruch Hu kefi kocho, and through all of these thoughts, he should be stirred back to serving Hashem. Halo matzinu she'Eliyahu lo diber im Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi avur she'arei ochal Yehudi toch sholosh parsaos karov li'iroi ki hayalo levakesh rachamim shelo teh tokola savivov. That's a Gemara in Makos. I don't remember that Gemara. But what the Gemara is saying is that there was a situation where Eliyahu Navi somehow crystallized, as we know he sometimes does, into physical form again, and he was in the presence of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, and Eliyahu Navi refused to speak, to communicate with Yeshua ben Levi, who we know, and recall other sources, where the Navi did actually communicate with Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, but I guess on one instance, he refused to communicate with him. Why? Because a lion ate a Jew within a distance of 3 parsas around Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's city. And Eliyahu Navi held Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi accountable for this. He should have prayed for the benefit of his community strong enough such that this type of thing would not happen. And therefore, you see from this source, the author is saying, that even Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, or perhaps particularly somebody like Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi on his level, was held accountable for something bad happening in his environment. He didn't do enough to protect through prayer or other means he had at his disposal to protect his environments or the people that were relevant to him in some way from these things, from these calamities. Yifchad tomid mi'elu ha'inyanim. Therefore, this is another situation where a person should always be worried and on the alert that, God forbid, his transgressions, his shortcomings, his sometimes temporary lack of connection might result in harm to his environment and to other people. It's important to recognize, and nowadays very many people are very conscious about environmental pollution, environmental control, that factories have to be regulated so that they don't emit dangerous poisons and smokes and dangerous materials have to be handled properly so that they shouldn't spill and mix with the environment and so forth and so on. Right? We have to, humanity has to realize that the same is true in a spiritual sense, and even more so. We're like little factories emitting poisonous, with the potential of emitting poisonous materials and vapors and gases through the language that we speak and the words that we use and the thoughts that we have. And we have to be responsible to our spiritual environment by making sure that we manage and have some spiritual pollution control and not be spewing forth harmful things into our environment. V'chen matzinu k'shahaya rav shalosh shonim b'yemei David. We also find when there was a famine for 3 consecutive years in the times of King David. Chipes be'eze avoin ba harav. He thought, he was looking for, investigated into what transgression would have resulted in these 3 years of famine. Levasof motza shebishvilo ba'arav. He eventually found out that it was because of him. The Gemara says in Yevamos, he was the source of this, of the famine. I don't remember what specifically it was, but he did institute that there should be 100 blessings made every day. And this is the source behind the fact that we should be conscious of every day making 100 blessings. From when you wake up until you go to bed, you can basically do it. If you do everything you're supposed to be doing, you can find 100 different opportunities to make blessings during the day. Shabbos is a bit different. It's a little more difficult because you don't have all 18 blessings of Shachris, Mincha, and Mariv as you do during the weekday. But you can make it up by making blessings over different types of foods and fruits and vegetables and things like that. Yeah.
Someone else made a blessing you say or made. Does that count?
I don't think so. Saying amen is a great thing, but I'm not sure. I don't think so. I'm not sure that saying amen to somebody else's blessing will count for you as a blessing unless he's made the blessing for you, like we spoke about before. If
you're eating with your friend, because you take very long to say Rakat Mizon, because you're relatively new to you, but he can do it in a couple of minutes, and you say to him, have me in mind when you say it, does that count as a bracha?
A person can have another person in mind for Birkat Hamazon.
That counts as me.
And it counts as if the other person is saying as well, as long as he hears every single word, and he has in mind that he is fulfilling the mitzvah consistently throughout the recitation of the Birkat Hamazon. Unfortunately, since it's very hard for us to do that, customarily we do not rely on this idea of arevus, being interconnected, having one person make another bracha for another person regarding Birkat Hamazon, only for short blessings, like the one-liners. What are you going to say?
Yeah, now because of the 3 weeks, it's like dangerous time.
Yeah.
And is there anything that's like custom that we do to increase this chus or something like that?
We definitely are told to refrain from engaging in anything dangerous or potentially harmful, not instigating legal, tfios and based in legal encounters and so forth, and particularly with non-Jews. And so because of the harmful times, we're warned from doing anything that might expose us to danger. In terms of proactively doing things to prevent us and to protect us, that would apply like any other time during the year, certainly more so during this year, which is more Torah study, more heartfelt observance, more good deeds, good speech, good thoughts. And it's true that it says, Misha nichnas Adar marbim besimcha, from the time that the month of Adar arrives, we increase joy. That's the holiday the month in which we have the holiday of Purim, which is very joyous. Av, the month which is approaching, Tisha B'Av, being the 9th of the month of Av, The sages say, Mishenichnas Av, Mematim Besimcha. We reduce Simcha, and it affects the types of things that we do. But notice that the sages don't say, when Adar comes, you increase joy, and when Av comes, you increase sadness. It doesn't say that. In the one case, you increase joy. In the other case, you decrease joy. But even when Av arrives, you still have to maintain joy. You just decrease it, right, by not doing things which are overly joyous. But certainly to be happy and fulfilled with the Torah and the mitzvahs and prayer and mitzvahs and good deeds and so forth and so on is very important to do. And now that this war is taking place, it's an opportunity for us to think about the unity that they really should be having among the Jewish people, and paying less attention to the differences between us and more attention to the similarities and the interconnectedness. And some people's uniform might be black and white, and others might be green, but we're all part of the same army.
There should be no animosity between Jews.
Yes, and therefore it's an opportunity to think, brotherly, loving thoughts about all Jews everywhere, and less emphasis on the extent to which this person is observant or that person is not, but rather we're all in the same boat together. And if the boat floats, we all stay alive. But if it sinks, we're all going to suffer. And therefore, we have to do everything we can to keep this ship afloat and not do anything to bore holes in it that might cause it to sink. And that means working together and recognizing that some people's job is to do this part of the ship. Some people do this to keep the ship afloat, and some do the others. Some cook, some carpenters, some work in the sails, some man the helm. Every different person or group of individuals has a different responsibility in keeping the ship afloat. And that's what we have to do, and not steer it onto into a wreck. So this is an opportunity then to like you're saying, Yosef, to pray on behalf of everyone everywhere, that they should be spared from danger and protected from harm, saying Tehillim a few times a day, giving more charity and all the other things that are being done. And people are sending food packages and gifts and kippahs and tzitzis and tefillin to the front line, all different types of things to kind of overcome the ordinary barriers that unfortunately exist between us and try and maintain a higher degree of unity. Yesterday I mentioned a teaching that's brought in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, that the word besimcha, which means to be in joy, is spelled the same way as the word machshava, which is thought. And the idea of the Baal Shem Tov is that going from a state of non-joy to joy is just a matter of rearranging your machshavot, your thoughts. If you rearrange your thoughts, equivalent to rearranging the letters of the word machshava, you can actually attain a state of besimcha, being in joy. So it kind of implies that we have a control over sorrow and sadness as well, based on how we look at things. And I think from the previous chapter that we saw here, that's also the case. When he was talking about joy, I think he was talking about managing sadness as well. I mean, it's not just it seems to me, from what he said here, it's not just about managing joy, it's actually managing sorrow as well. You can use sorrow to bring about joy. You can rearrange your thoughts about things that make you sad in order to actually give a different perspective and make you happy. I'm not entirely sure, but it seems that we have control over everything, really. That's part of our free will. We have control. God made us that way. And that's why the Nefesh Chaim says that we were created B'Tselem Elokim. Why does it say in the Torah that God created man in the image of God, using the specific name of God as Elokim? There are other names for God. There's Yud Ke Vav Ke, right? There's Shaddai. And there are other names, Tzfakot. There are many different names for God. So why did God tell us that He created us in the image of Elokim? And the Nefesh Chaim makes the point that Elokim it denotes God's power over all forces. And so we were created specifically in the image of God insofar as we have control over everything other than God. We have control over everything that was created. We were created in the image of God. And therefore everything that exists was given under our rulership to use, of course, properly in the way in which the Creator. And so that's what the Nefesh Chaim says, that God is Yud Ke Vav Ke, which is the Creator. And we were created in the image of the Creator's ability to rule, not just to create. And that's Elokim. We don't create. We're not creators, but we're movers. And that means we have the ability to move and control everything. Things which are outside of us, in the physical and the spiritual realm, and things which are in us as well. We can rule our environment, move things, huge things. We can also move angels, and we can move demons, and we can move and control and manipulate all forces in the spiritual realm, dark or light. And we have the same ability to, therefore, control and rule over everything within us, whether it's dark or light. We're movers and shakers. God's the creator. We're the movers and the shakers. And therefore, anything that happens, he has to be concerned, worried, that maybe because of him it arise. So this would be another context in which it's considered positive to worry. Vim yeshlo mazel tov v'shalva, if he's got a good influence and everything is serene, yidag shem yochal ba'olam hazeh yasoy baba. He should be worried that perhaps in his serenity here, he's actually eating up his merit and therefore depleting it in the world to come. Imhu ani miyusar biyasurim. If he's a poor person who's suffering from pains, yidag shem ha'oini v'yisurin hem pri avanosov. The keren kayemes l'olam haba. He should be concerned that maybe this suffering is because of his transgressions, even though the good deeds will be remaining for him in the world to come. And if it's because of this poverty, he had to nullify, negate Torah study, Yidag Yoser, he should be even more concerned, because his suffering, insofar it's causing him to depart from Torah, is a sign that something's not right. It's one thing to suffer as long as it doesn't affect your Torah study, but if it's affecting your Torah study and your prayer and your mitzvah, it's a sign that something's not right. Imu chacham b'Torah, if he's wise in Torah, he should be concerned, shemalo hiyu ma'asav defi chachmaso. Maybe he won't be living up to what should be expected of him, given what he knows. We spoke about that a bit earlier. V'im einu chacham, and if he's not a wise person, yidag al zeh, ken yichol la'amik b'shoresh hasidus. He should be concerned that he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing because he can't. He's not. This is harder for me to understand. He was created with the abilities he was created with. Why should he be worried about not being able to realize more than his potential? But that's what he seems to be saying. Maybe what it means is, in either case, whether he's wise or he's not, a person should be concerned and worried that he's not living up to his potential. If he gets honor and respect from people, he has to be careful not to be joyful because of that honor. He could be happy that people are showing respect to his position as a Torah scholar, so that the honor is being deflected from him to Hashem, but not that he should derive any physical, any personal joy over being respected. And he should be concerned that if he is the subject of respect, he should be concerned that if he gets any pleasure from that, he's actually depleting from his reward. But if he's wise, but he's also despised, he should be happy as a result of this. But even here there's a side that he should be concerned about, namely that since even though he's wise, he's despised, people will not be taking his words that could ordinarily otherwise help them, wouldn't be taking that to heart, so he should be concerned about it as well. So he's just trying to flesh out different scenarios where no matter what a situation a person has, there is a role for worry to open up the possibility for improvement. That's basically the point. Worry is a bad thing. However, it can be used to keep open for us the opportunity to keep moving forward, to keep progressing, and to keep elevating. That form of worry is a very good thing. Okay. I think we're going to have to end here in order to let the next class start on time.